Welcome back to When Stars Fill Half the Sky, a novel by Pete Caputo. Chapter 22, Tales of e-Nok, Part 1. Many years before Lumer was born, lived a man on the dark continent of Mizbol. He worked his land forging ore into metals for all kinds of crafts and wares. His name was Nilka, a good man who worked hard to make a good life for his family. Life in this unforgiving place was difficult and not for the faint of heart. Few dared to venture into the treacherous mountain ranges rising above vast green rainforests, an impenetrable place where huge carnivores and merciless predators laid claim. But word was spreading quickly, for there were rich veins of the precious metal Goshendla running through the heart of those mountains. Suddenly, all eyes were fixed on this remote place, and although he'd once profited, Nilka was presently being robbed and pillaged by trespassers and opportunists.
"This is my Goshendla, from my ground. Either you pay me my due, or I will release the beasts upon you, and they will devour you."
Fear of these monsters worked for a while, until even they were overwhelmed by this new wave of greed and corruption. Bandits sprawled across Nilka's land. They continued to mine his ore and tame his beasts. The tide was turning, so for the sake and safety of his wife and children, he took what riches he had and fled far away to a town where his 3 sons could attend higher learning and academics. His eldest son, e-Nok, became a scientist specializing in the refining of Goshendla. He had a brilliant and elegant mind, dedicated to scientific discovery. He was particularly interested in how this metal could be blended with many other materials, forming unique alloys, compounds, and amalgams. But e-Nok was a social misfit due to a severe stutter from early childhood. So he preferred working in solitude, where he could continue his projects unhindered and without scrutiny, not chided or ridiculed for his speech impediment. One day, e-Nok observed an unusually high amount of energy discharged after combining Goshendla with the skin of the Maricel plant and human tissue. He called it Nilka flesh, as a tribute to his father, who had recently passed away. This substance was entirely unique for its elasticity and translucence, but more importantly, it was a highly efficient conductor of Maricel energy. e-Nok was also able to develop vast storage cells, allowing the energy from the Maricel plant to be used in ways never before imagined. News spread quickly of e-Nok's discovery. His renown spread even to the shores of the lost land of Quixana, where evil eyes lusted over his invention, eager to utilize Nilka flesh to feed its military-industrial complex. But e-Nok, knowing that his life's work could be used for either great good or unfathomable evil, never disclosed his techniques to anyone, much to the displeasure and irritation of the Quixanian oligarchs. For try as they may, they simply could not reverse engineer his Nilka flesh. Finally, they arrested e-Nok on false charges, torturing him until he would divulge his secret. Unsuccessful in getting the scientist to talk, they sentenced him with treason, moving him to a work camp to languish for the rest of his life upon the frozen plains of the northern Mizbol ice shelf. But a young senator from the capital city of Z learned of e-Nok's fate. He used his influences and resources to free e-Nok from captivity. e-Nok, although grateful, was not ignorant of the politician's ulterior motives. Sin Mubal was a crafty and influential leader. Known in his inner circles as Silk Tongue, he would commonly be called on when words of persuasion or coercion were needed by his party compatriots. Eventually, Silk Tongue's words worked on e-Nok as well, convincing him to create a communications device to help even the poorest thrive. So, e-Nok shared his designs with a team put together by the senator, and together they developed a new processor that was supposed to be a free form of communication for all Quixanians. But in the end, it turned out to be nothing more than a mind-control device intended to maintain power and influence over the masses. This new system would become the very touchstone of their existence, society, philosophy, and means of enlightenment for all Quixanians. As a result, they advanced amazingly fast, going from a Bronze Age culture to explorers of science, mathematics, and the metaphysical, all in less than a century. But no civilization could advance that quickly without consequence, for the vast riches bestowed upon the Quixanian people could not satisfy their lust for more, and so conquer the weak and disenfranchised would become their hue and cry. Sin Mubal by this point had risen to the office of Prime Minister with a vision of further advancing the Quixanian Empire. He had his eyes set on the continent of Mizbol, still vastly rich in natural resources, including Goshendla. But the Mizbolians, although not as fully advanced as their Quixanian counterparts, would not easily comply. Mizbol also had allies ready to help them stave off the advances of Quixana. The political climate was also changing for Sin Mubal. Many of his own people started viewing his policies as tyrannical. A coup was successfully launched and he was ousted from power. They tried to seize him, but the Silk Tongue was always one step ahead of his enemies. e-Nok was not as fortunate, once again being placed in a prison camp, this time in the heart of Z, the capital of Quixana. Sin Mubal fled to a lonely island not far from the southern coast of the largest continent nation on Teleria, Alabez. Now, aging was a very slow process in the First World, a byproduct of exposure to the Maricel. Both Sin Mubal and e-Nok were still in the prime of their lives 100 years later as the ousted leader continued to work on a plan to reclaim his position of power on Quixana. He maintained communication with a small group of clandestine informants called the Society. In exchange for their loyalty, Sin Mubal paid them handsomely and with promises of even more riches and influence. e-Nok, presently a slave to the Society, continued his research and development, unaware that his captors were working for the Silk Tongue. They exploited e-Nok's new discoveries, using them for military purposes and devices of war. Soon, the Society became a shadow government for the ousted leader, and even with Sin Mubal still in hiding, they built the largest and most powerful war machine Teleria had ever known. Unwittingly, e-Nok helped design their first flying machines, convinced once again they were intended for humanitarian purposes. But this new technology would soon rain down terror upon the enemies of the Society. Mizbol was the first to fall. Now their sights were on the peace-loving people of Alabez. The Society had just launched their initial attack on that land, the attack where Lumer had just lost both of his parents. The day after the attack, Silta, the time traveler, visited e-Nok, alone in his laboratory. With head in hands, e-Nok leaned against his bench, lamenting the latest report of hundreds who had just died in the attack on Me'eshasi Singmo. Now, more than ever, he wanted vengeance for all the evils and injustices levied by those who'd misappropriated the works of his hands. Slowly, he lifted his head and viewed his finished design for a new fleet of flying machines built for the society. 3 new designs were commissioned, vessels capable of interplanetary travel. Early the next morning, a test launch was planned for one of these ships. However, they were not aware e-Nok had a 4th design, one that he planned only to share with his son, Goss, a highly capable pilot and space orbiter working for the Quixanian military. The society was not aware of a new alliance e-Nok made with a group of investors agreeing to build this 4th design for e-Nok and his family in exchange for rights to the technology. Of course, e-Nok did not trust them any more than he did the society. But a new fear gripped e-Nok, for he was certain the entire planet was on the precipice of destruction. Nilka flesh was quickly spreading across the world in web-like fashion, creating an impressive energy network free for all citizens of Teleria. But as the network was near completion, e-Nok was alarmed at how highly unstable it had become. He tried to warn them, but no one would listen. His calculations were even more alarming. Presently, a series of catastrophic events was imminent. That night, a strange light shimmered in his room. He saw it from the corner of his eye. It was not bright, nor was it alarming. Instead, this light calmed his nerves and his troubled heart as it was softly absorbed by every surface it touched. He held out his hands and watched the tiny streams of brilliant color slip into his outstretched palms. He had not felt this pleasure for many years. So familiar it was to an experience he felt as a child while still on Mizbol, standing before the Prish Toloi in a sacred garden near his childhood home. Now once again that presence flooded his room. He fell to his knees and bowed his head in awestruck wonder. He placed his hands over the back of his head to cover his nakedness, thinking he was in the presence of Elohim.
Arise, e-Nok. I am not your deity. I am just a traveler. I come to you in peace.
e-Nok slowly lifted his head. His eyes, now saturated with the brilliance of the Moricel, dazzled as he witnessed a transformation of his familiar surroundings. His thoughts started to mingle with the travelers, the same way it would for another Earth traveler many, many years later. Now, completely immersed in the half-realm, e-Nok stood to his feet and walked toward Silta. I have not felt this way since my rite of passage in my youth, proclaimed e-Nok. He stopped, realizing his words were clearly spoken, no stuttering, like someone seizing control of his tongue, allowing him to communicate unfettered by the limitations of flesh and bone. He continued, "It reminds me of the words spoken to me by Elohim. He told me my discoveries would bring the world great joy, but also great pain. He told me how I would go places where no Talarian could ever go, that I will take part in fighting evil, and evil perverting the work of my own hands. Then it was promised to me that I will witness the completion of the master plan. I thought none of that would ever take place. It's been so long and so much has happened. I thought he had forgotten me." e-Nok lowered his head into his hands and wept. He was now realizing the promises given to him as a child more than 200 years ago were not abandoned. that those who exploited his life's work would pay for their sins. It is a great honor to meet you, e-Nok. This is most comforting. As you can see, my existence, my world is billions of years into your future, a place and time where the Morrisel has no connection to your deity. I have never known your deity, but now I see in this moment of our shared consciousness how real your connection is. This rite of passage experience you talk about, I have seen this before, but never understood its importance.
The rite of passage was never meant to be shared. It is intended solely for the individual.
I see. Yet I am perplexed by how your world could reject such wonder and beauty. You have the opportunity to share a pure and perfect relationship with the One. Still, most of your world has abandoned this privilege and sought severance from the presence of your deity.
e-Nok was presently witnessing future events at the far reaches of the known universe. Together, the travelers floated alone in space as Silta was running out of time. Likewise, I'm fascinated by your relationship to the Morrisel and how it has never revealed the Creator to you.
True, but I am open to learning why. I see the one you call Silk Tongue, and how he will soon form an alliance with another Talarian. Together, they will unleash a reign of terror that will last the span of 2 ages on this planet. From there, their influence will spill out into many realms of the universe. What baffles me is why your deity will allow this.
I cannot claim to know or understand why Elohim does what he does. All I know is he is not evil, nor does he exact any ill will on his creation. Evil, like you're describing, is connected to our thirst for knowledge. Not that knowledge is evil, because it's not. It's just that everything in life, including knowledge, should return us to our divine purpose and calling. But now that I am here with you, it is clear, no matter how primitive or advanced we are, the lust for power and control is the greatest temptation of all. But it is only an illusion. Only faith in Elohim and his promises can lead to true fulfillment.
But even the faithful have often been perverted in your world. I have seen much of your planet's history, still in your future, of course. It will endure 2 basic ages. First, Talaria, where the Morrisel is abundantly available, and in the next one, where it rarely was ever seen. But in both iterations, faith had little influence.
The ultimate goal of faith is not to change the world. It's intended to transform the individual. Hopefully, those individuals move on to change the world around them. Faith may seek knowledge, but it shuns the lure of influence and power that comes with knowledge. Instead, faith willingly surrenders our gains in power back to Elohim. It is what we do as Talarians, and in doing so, we find freedom.
Freedom. I do not see a free person before me. I see a being sentenced to captivity, an individual who is silently seeking revenge on those who have controlled him.
This is true. You are correct. I do falter in weakness, and on many occasions I have ignored the promises of my Creator. But the more I seek to control, the more I drift.
In this, we agree, for I drift as well,
gasped Silta, struggling to make sense of e-Nok's words as they both stared at the gathering lights of the Omega Singularity. He turned to e-Nok and answered sharply,
"When our journey is over, I will return here to my reality with only seconds to live. But as I draw my last breath, I would have preferred to have learned what purpose there was for my existence."
What makes you believe this is truly the end?
Look at me. I have no choice but to surrender to Omega. What awaits, I do not know. But in all of my exploits and travels throughout the universe, I have never known an individual who has successfully communicated back from beyond their point of expiration. The faithful like you are the only ones who dare to opine on what is beyond death. But their logic, their words are never lined up with evidence. What is the point?
Logic? Lined up? Point? This is linear thinking, Silta. Nothing can ever line up, no matter how our reasoning demands it. There has never been and never will be a straight line found anywhere in creation.
You are not the first to posit this theory. Still, you cannot deny the straight line of sight between us, nor simply dismiss it as a mere mental construct. We are from two vastly different periods of time, yet we share a singular present moment, and this moment cries for us to explore it together.
Yes, I agree. As long as we are here in this place, we can. We should explore.
There are two other travelers, individuals whose time is yet to be in your future, yet long forgotten in my past. They are intricately tethered to this same journey we are on. I believe we will see them as we travel together. I do not know for what purpose or for what calling. We each have our different agendas and reasons for being here. But you and the others still have your lives ahead of you to find the answers. I, on the other hand, will be facing imminent death as soon as we've completed this journey.
Neither said anything for a moment, as they gathered their thoughts, as if
packing for a long trip.
Well then, I hope for your sake that we find the answers you seek.
All went black for a moment as they were taken to a place neither could have ever imagined. As if suspended in a soup of nothingness, they floated with no point of reference or familiarity. There, they waited for what felt like an eternity until suddenly a voice rang out. It was a familiar tone, spoken to each in their native tongues. A warm and inviting voice it was, like a mother whispering for the first time to her newborn child. A small point of light appeared, as if very far off in the distance. Whether it was moving very quickly toward them or they toward it, they could not determine. The voice spoke again.
Greetings, in the name of the One whose name cannot be contained nor defined, the all-knowing, the ever-present One, capable of creating and sustaining both time and eternity, the One who has brought you to this place to see that which has never been seen by temporal beings.
From the ink-black darkness, they saw a form taking shape. It was a being with a body similar to one of a lion. It glistened with what appeared to be a coat of 1,000 black eyes, all focused on e-Nok and Silta. From the lion's back, huge wings suddenly appeared, spreading far and wide, and then softly enveloping the travelers.
I am the Iranth Danwarji. I am the eternal guardian of the throne, and the teller of the Sinti Alka. I will now explain how all things created came to be.
How will the words spoken by the guardian of the throne affect e-Nok and Silta, and what effect will it have on the plans of the alliance of Babel and Lumer? Find out in the next chapter as the travelers learn more than they could have ever expected.